Why didn't you, Iman? Thank you. Am I appropriately positioned? Am I appropriately positioned? Can you see me? Am I audible enough? Say that again. Thank you. I've got a book underneath my. I can get another one. Oh, okay. Right there. Thank you. Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Yes, I do. Okay. Great.
10 to 10.
All right then. Thank you.
Hi, Sissy, how are you? Good, thank you. Are we starting at 10 to 10? That's great. Yeah. So am I looking into the webcam now? So now I'm looking into the, okay, I'll do that. But what I like to look at is actually myself. Now remember, webcam. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to do another meeting in the meantime, and then I'll come back. Thank you, my sister.
Yeah, it said the host can only unmute me, so that's why I'm struggling. Okay. Thank you. Morning. Okay. Cool. Thank you. I know. A cold front coming, so. Mm, mm, mm. Just right about that light behind me. Cool. So I'll see you at 10 to 10. I'm not going to jump off. I'll stay online. Perfect. See you later.
Good morning. I'm fine, thanks. How are you? Thank you. Still trying to wear my earrings. I'm good. Uh, okay. 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 Yeah. Yes. Mm. Okay. Oh, is it fine? It's too much? Okay. 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 Cool. Thank you. Uh, bye.
Fine, thanks. And you? Oh, thank you. So, is that okay? Okay. Okay. Oh, we shouldn't switch off. We can leave out and
Ash, just before we go live, I mean, if I'm leaving it to you to Good morning. Good morning, and thank you for joining us for the third in a four-part webinar series, which is focusing on women's economic empowerment. And of course, our grand objective of placing women at the center of our economy. Those stats that you've just seen are a cause for concern, change in the right direction. And today we will focus on how to ensure that women get the access to funding they need to oxygenate their enterprises, keep them sustainable and profitable through continuous support and equitable access. But before we do that, and before I introduce our panelists to you, I am going to invite you to join me to peep into the lives and stories of three women and their funding journeys.
Many listeners and funding engango 50,000 bafike manje ukuthi ngeke ngikwazi ukuthi ngiyithole ngoba iminyaka yami isingaphezulu kweminyaka abayibekile ukuthi-ke bayakhipha low funding ukuxhasa abantu bamabhizinisi. Emva kwalokho ngahamba ngamasipala wami nakhona ngethi ngiyozama ukucela usizo, nakhona ngafike ngahluleka bantshela ukuthi-ke iy'mali azikho kodwa angilinde ibhajethi ngonyaka olandelayo. Selokhu ngalinda lokho-ke kodwa-ke ngangilokhu ngiqhukuluza nje ngizama ukuthi-ke kube khona engikutholayo kodwa azange kuze kuphumelele. Kwathi ngonyaka ka-2019 ngagcina sengiqashwa umuntu wamlungu ngithola umsebenzi njengoba ngisebenza njengamanje. Kodwa-ke ngiyafisa ukuthi ngelinye ilanga inkampani yami iqhubekele phambili isebenze iphumelele. Ngiyabonga.
Access to finance has always been challenging for me as a female entrepreneur. It was even worse over this period, trying to access debt funding for my business. It wasn't so much compliance that was the issue, but it was the fact that the qualifying criteria was over the top and there was absolutely no channels, communication channels to clarify requirements. I found it very frustrating and extremely tiring. If it wasn't for the fact that I have networks that I could access, I would have given up a long time ago. And the fact that my team depended on me, so I have other families that I was responsible for, that's what's kept me going. I believe that all these elements is a way of sidelining women from economic activities.
My name is Ropefaza Muswaire. I am co-founder and CEO of WoSA Technologies. My story with investment is in some ways unique. I joined an incubator and accelerator program called Mist Africa back in 2018. I spent a year in Accra, Ghana, receiving training from them, and at the end of the year, an opportunity to pitch to them, and they became my seed investor. So I'm actually about to start an additional story with investment. And what I have done is, over the last year we've been operational, I built a database of potential investors and advisors who I kept up to date on the progress that we are making as a business. Many of these are people who are specifically targeted and focused at women-led enterprises. I also joined a few incubator programs and have made use of my existing community to give me warm introductions to potential investors.
So those were some really powerful stories. And I think what is most interesting is just the diverse experiences that women are having in the market in accessing crucial funding. We will tease out those themes with our amazing panel in just a short time. But today we welcome you on the Women of South Africa platform. And to share the objectives and the message of WoSA is spokesperson Mamstaaf Sithole.
Thanks very much, Iman, and good morning, everybody. I'm speaking here on behalf of Women of South Africa, which is a movement, and I will briefly just share what this movement stands for. What this movement stands for is saying that as women in South Africa, we are 51% shareholders of the company, which is the country. And we say as women, let's unite and demand our shareholding equity in terms of dividends in this South Africa Inc. And why we are doing that is that there is an enormous legacy of gender inequality. After 64 years of women who marched against geographical lockout to the Union Building in 1956, we still experience funding as the most gender-biased obstacle. Secondly, research indicates that capital, which is available to male entrepreneurs, is more than twice that of the female entrepreneurs, irrespective of whether the business is new or is already in existence. What is more alarming also is that women find it difficult to secure funding from both banks and development institutions due to inherent biases in the various systems. Women tend to be judged on their performance while men get rated on their potential. So what Women of South Africa is saying as a movement is that as an umbrella economic empowerment movement, we call upon individual women who are in business, women formations, which house interests of various women. We call upon them to join this umbrella organization as we say it is now the time, women in now. And what do we want as a women movement? We are saying 51% should be set aside as funding opportunities by funding institutions, both the FDIs and the private sector, so that women can be given an opportunity to flourish in business environment. More importantly, we request that 51% of women must be represented in the decision-making table. And what is more important in this instance is that in instances where women are, we want to see a difference in the way decisions are made, which are biased towards women. And we are saying to those women, share with us the challenges which impedes you to carry the torch of women interest. As WoSA, we say, let's enforce the current gender equality laws and let's fast track the promulgation of Women Empowerment and Gender Equality Bill, which was withdrawn 2 years ago from Parliament. And let's put an accountability measure in place in a form of a barometer, which we will use to measure and track gender equality performance in both public and private sector. And how will we all get involved in this call for action? There is a petition which we call every South African woman to sign the petition, including men. There will be a protest action and the details will be announced on our website, on our Facebook and Twitter. And that action will be to protest and make sure that our demands are considered. The third one is that we are busy now implementing the webinars, and today is the third one, which are themed and they are trying to profile our demands. We will be engaging in a process to plan a convention of all women to converge so that we can come and formalize our demands and engage with the decision-making powers, both private and public sector. In terms of the petition can be found on our website, www.womenofsouthafrica.org, or you can send an email and you will be sent the petition at info@womenofsouthafrica.org, or you can get it and follow us on Twitter at Women of ZA. Facebook is at Women of ZA, and hashtag Sikalo Zamakosikazi. It will be more enlightening if our esteemed guests today and speakers and panelists could clarify and share with us some of their institutional strategies in terms of how their institutions, what are the strategies which are in place in their respective financial institutions to ensure that they are set aside for funding of women-owned businesses. More importantly, maybe share with us the mechanisms which are in place to track progress on the implementation of this set-aside strategies. But also, what are those challenges which impedes gender-biased funding in these institutions? I thank you, Iman.
Thank you so much, Mum Staff. And I think the important distinction between perhaps movements that have gone before or attempts that we've made before in this economy to equalize and level the playing field for women is the lack of holding to account institutions and organizations whose responsibilities it is to do those very things. And so the difference with this movement this August and this Women's Month is to, as Mum Staff is saying, create that barometer of accountability, look at activating pieces of legislation that will open the way even further, enforce the legislation that already exists in the space, so that together the picture of equitable access for funding for women and all of the other big issues that are impeding women's economic agency can be eroded, and we can eventually start to play in a fair space. So thank you so much for that. Now, if this is the first time you're listening to a webinar on the WoSA platform, I would like you to feel welcome. I would like you to participate in the chat. And in fact, we've already had a comment come through, and someone said, before we get serious, can I just say you look amazing? And I'm just going to take all that praise, ladies, because I think I was, at that point, the only person that they'd seen. But once they see everyone, not only are they going to be wowed by, I suppose, our appearance, but also, more importantly, what we're bringing to the table in terms of opening the obstacles that currently exist. So each week, we've brought you authoritative real women who speak from their experience. They speak from their scholarship and from their hearts about how we can dismantle obstructive practices to get where we need to go, and this week is no different. I'm going to introduce my panelists to you now. From a woman who roamed the sugarcane fields of KwaZulu-Natal and farmed its bounty, Lindiwe Lee Klubi is a sugarcane farmer and a founding member and vice chairperson of the South African Farmers Development Association, and they represent thousands of small-scale growers in KZN and in Mpumalanga. From one of the most prominent funding agencies in the country, the National Empowerment Fund, Hlengiwe Makatini is Financial Divisional Executive for Venture Capital and Corporate, and Chief Executive for Personal and Business Banking at Standard Bank, Funeka Montjani. As the children say, and you'll probably hear them from time to time in the background, they're all doing the online school. It's gonna be lit, where are my matches? I'm just kidding. Let's start. I just want to remind you that you are welcome to ask questions and paste comments in the chat. I'll be more than happy to pose them to the panel. Just write your name or be anonymous if that's your preference, but please interact and ask as many questions as you can. So let's kick off with our first segment entitled The Impact of Limited Access to Funding. And effectively, this is the picture of the way things are. Lee, let me start with you. Kumbizile's story, and we saw her story firsthand, is similar to so many others. There is roadblock after roadblock. And what's interesting is that 88% of small businesses are self-funding. They have never applied for funding. Some don't even know where to go for funding. Why do you think this picture persists?
Thank you, Iman. Can you hear me?
I can indeed. Go ahead.
Thank you, Iman. As you've introduced me, I come from the sugarcane farming industry, but started farming back in 2007. And have had the experience of knocking in different doors and different organizations, trying to find funding to help me, do farming. When I found the farm looking so great, and only to find that it had been made, to look great for selling. And you come in and everything just dies down. Then you go and try and knock into the banking industries. Banks don't even look at us because, especially in this industry, it has been made predominantly only for the chosen few. If you look into the records, in the sugarcane industry, it is predominantly made out of small-scale growers who farm in the most difficult lands, which usually does not make a success of the business from onset until you have tried and tried again. And that's where the whole thing becomes a stumbling block. Because you go to the bank wants to know how much farming have you done, and if you haven't done as much. They ask you about your estimates. Sometimes you don't even know the lingo that is used in those corridors. You're just baffled, and you give them the answers. Maybe sometimes you think it's the answers that they want to hear, only to find that they look at you and they say, she doesn't have experience, we're not going to take a chance with her. I went through all sorts in the onset. Fortunately for me, I'm a land reform farmer. I'm not in as bad a situation as the small scale farmers who sometimes come from the most rural countryside, who don't even know how to get to a bank to ask for money. And sometimes it's not even, doing it for a business consciously, but it is doing it to make a living out of the sugarcane that she finds herself having to go to.
Just a quick one, Lee, because you said so much there that I think we need to concentrate on and tease apart in this conversation, because I believe that it is possibly the story for the majority of, especially women-owned and run enterprises out there. Why would you say, or how widespread would you say that description that you've just shared with us is, that so many people don't know where to go? They're not sure how to access things. They're pretty much outside the information chain.
I just mentioned to you that some of us, the majority of us, come from the most rural areas where getting to a bank is as taboo as, packing and saying, I'm going to Joburg. But when you have somebody holding your hand to do that, like the organization that I'm part of now, SAFTA, who are able to even bring these banks to the people to say, talk to them, try and find a way of, dealing with them. Sometimes SAFTA says, come to SAFTA and give SAFTA funding so that SAFTA is able to distribute it to the people that can't get in. But the gist of this situation is that sometimes as a woman, you find yourself in a situation where you are left with this business that your husband has been doing, and you were not involved, except with your hands and maybe helping out with the people that are sort of employed. Back in most cases, we don't even employ. It's just a family that comes together because we know that to put a plate on the table, this sugarcane stick must have grown through different stages and be able to sell.
Well, take a break for me just for a second, Lee, because I know, and that's the reason, as you say, and you're one of the founding members of SAFTA, is that's what created the need for this organization, because the stories are so many. And we're speaking in that sense almost exclusively for the farming and agricultural sector. However, that story and that thread exists through different sectors in the South African economy. I want to come to you really quickly, Funeka, just to reflect on Mariam's story, who was talking about qualifying criterion being simply over the top. It is almost, prohibitive, and when you want to interact with people to get clarity, there's hardly anyone to talk to. I know that recently, there was a news headline just regarding, your institution issuing, upwards of 450 million rands worth of funding to small and medium-sized enterprises. This is up until February this year. But how prohibitive, honestly speaking, is the funding criteria, and is it in touch with the conditions under which our entrepreneurs are operating?
Thank you very much, Iman, and thank you to everybody who has joined the webinar. I want to say that the reason why I've joined this forum is, this conversation is because of my grandmother. I'm not necessarily here representing my institution. I'm here to share what my story of coming from a village and from a woman who ran what would be considered an unimportant business, a micro business. She had very limited amount of money to feed us. And the only way in which she could actually make ends meet was to run small businesses, Altengiza, and that ultimately helped us to live from day to day. So I come from Wandebele. I don't come from Johannesburg. I don't come from the cities. I learned English on TV. a lot of the reason why I wanted to go into banking was to actually understand these types of things that felt like the economic system is so far away from us. And not just from a woman perspective, but from Abantu perspective, and particularly from people who don't necessarily come from urban areas, who don't have connections, etc. So what I'm simply going to share is what my experience has been in the last 13 years of working in the banking industry. How do these things look like from the banking industry out, so that I'm hoping that in this conversation, we can find a way to meet one another somewhere. And I'm hoping to be very clear about what is the bank going to do and what the bank is not going to do. So very briefly, I've been in banking now for 13 years. I started off as a chief financial officer, but I've spent quite an extensive amount of time in the credit department, the very area that makes decisions about who gets money and who doesn't, and the very area of these, and as you can imagine, a lot of the decisions are automated. I have built a scorecard myself. I know what goes into a credit scorecard. I sit in a lot of credit committees where decisions are ultimately made around particularly big ticket money, about what it is. When I started off as a financial director, one of the things I asked to see is, I want to see the scorecard that makes all the yes and no decisions, because I want to see what makes that up. When I went into the credit team, I actually did see the variables that go into that. The only three things I can say, Sisiman, just to contribute to the conversation so far. The first one is that banks don't provide seed funding, not routinely. So that's very clear. I think that the banks don't, if you think about the people who own banks, the people who own banks put in, on average, 10 to 15 cents for every rand that is used to fund the nation. The rest of it actually comes from pension funds in particular. So this is the money that will, and other institutional investors. So this is not their own money. There are very strict criteria about how, and these are not necessarily, on a broad perspective, these criteria are the riskier business you do, the more money that the owners have to put into the business. And therefore, by and large, except if a bank is a private equity company or wing, most banks do not routinely do seed funding. So that's the first step.
Interjection then, are you saying that we should just, for people who are looking for VC or for venture capital, for angel funding, for seed funding, don't go to a bank?
So I want to make my point incomplete. Banks don't do seed funding routinely. There are many institutions that do seed funding. I think banks should do a much better job when someone comes in and is looking for seed funding, to be able to direct them to places where the seed funding does. But what banks do is scalers. Banks are there to take really good businesses, or at least promising businesses, and inject them with capital and grow. But you don't come with, when you come with a bank with a seed idea or an idea that's not yet developed, you are going to be frustrated, because the bank is looking for an idea that is bankable, and the bank is looking for track record. So it wants to know that your business has done a good job for a particular, for 6 to 12 months on average before it can grow. So my sense is that this is not, banks will work much better if banks partner with all these other institutions, because the bank is actually not a one-stop shop. Okay. But because people are coming through the feet, you've got the foot flow of people looking through funding, etc., it is very important that the partnerships happen. The last point that I want to make is, even in established businesses that come through, and I'm going to use the COVID scheme, the RSA COVID scheme as an example. Women, the businesses that are established, what we see is that the credit risk, they manage their books much better. Their credit, women manage their credit much better than males do. but we get far less applications for women than what we get from guys. And so those things, there is something in this conversation amongst us as women that we can have, that even when we have really good bankable ideas, there is a level of risk aversion that comes in. And maybe it simply comes from hearing so many no's for so many times. Yeah. But even when a business is ready for scaling, the applications that come through, and I'm not talking yes or no, and this is not application that goes through people. This is an application where anyone can go anywhere, either through a branch or online, and apply for this COVID loans. The applications from women entrepreneurs are much less than what you see from male, particularly Black women entrepreneurs. So let me pause there.
That to me, and thank you very much for setting out a frank picture, which I think is educational in the sense that if people are going to make banking institutions their first port of call, might have to rethink their strategy along that sort of continuum of seeking finance. That may not be the best starting point. But I think some of the points that you raise as well, I want to tease out as the conversation progresses. And just to let everybody know, I said to the panelists yesterday, let's just have a real conversation. If you want to come in, if you need to interject, just indicate and you come in, because what I want is for everybody who is listening to be able to take something away from this interaction that is useful to you today in your business. And if there is an epiphany that those who are the controllers or have access to managing massive amounts of money, there might be something that you take back to your to your institutions or to your organizations that says we have to change the way we look at this picture. So please keep your comments coming in. Please keep interacting on the chat. Don't forget to sign the petition. I want to share this to the point that you were making, Funeka. There was a study from Harvard and Columbia's business schools that the venture capitalists tend to ask male and female founders different types of questions. And I think for a lot of women listening, this is something you need to bear in mind. Male founders are often asked about the potential for gains, but female founders are often asked for the potential for losses. So there's already that inbuilt bias in the way that women and men are expected to explain their business and interrogate their business ideas. And it goes back maybe to some of the aversion then that some women feel in going up, to these big institutions to apply for money. Let's bring it to the NEF then. And Hlengiwe, the NEF manages billions in funding support. We know this, and over the, I think since the beginning, really, almost 1,000 transactions, you've approved just over the 9 billion rand mark. So that's over it's 9.3 billion for Black-owned managed and managed businesses. But 3.4 billion was approved for the empowerment of businesses that were owned and managed by Black women entrepreneurs. And I guess the question then is why the majority of recipients, especially from the NEF's perspective, not women?
Thank you so much, Iman, and my fellow panelists, and good morning to the ladies that are on the call this morning. And yeah, this is a very important conversation, especially from our perspective as the NEF. When Sister was talking earlier on about some of the objectives of Women of South Africa, to say we need to, track progress in terms of empowerment of women and so forth, are things that at the NEF we realized earlier on in our journey that they are critical. You are correct. Over the past 15 years, NEF has approved, I think, just over 10 billion. And over 34% has been towards approval of transactions that are majority women owned. But as Funeka was saying, the biggest challenge is you don't get enough applications for women. And it's a number of issues that, make these applications few. I think at the crux of the issue, Iman, is the availability of opportunities that people can present to funders. Because the reality of the matter is that in South Africa, gender biases, opportunities are given first to men before they're given to women. Because women, we are at home, we are looking after the kids, we are cooking after work. When our male counterparts have opportunities to go, play golf, network, and in the process actually get opportunities. So the number of opportunities that women are exposed to that can actually allow them to come to people like the NEF, to the banks and so forth, are fewer. But as Funeka was saying earlier on, it is also our experience that where you have funded women, they pay you much faster than the guys do. They communicate better when businesses are facing challenges. They are more open to say, NEF, this is the challenge that my business is facing. How can you assist me? But the biggest hurdle is to actually get women through the door. So what we did at the NEF is actually we set aside a fund which is just for women. So we call it the Women Empowerment Fund, and we go out there, we go to women and we say, if you have a business idea, because fortunately for us, we do fund a lot of seed, we do provide a lot of seed capital. So we go out there, we say to women, please come to the NEF if you have a great idea. We are willing to partner with you. And it's funny that, women want to bring a perfect product. They're scared to come to you when it's idea that needs to be explored, where we have to work together, do feasibility studies. Because if you look at our venture capital fund, very few women have come to us and say, NEF, we have an idea, help us develop it. Guys have the guts. They will just come to you with one piece of paper and say, how can you partner with me? So it's also about us educating women from an early age to say, pursue opportunities. Do not be scared to dream. If you have your dreams, look out to say, how can I make sure that, I fulfill them? But on the other end, who are the people who are making these decisions? And we've seen, at the NEF that because we have a majority of, women as our employees, they are more understanding of challenges that women face. So when women come to bring opportunities, there's more excitement because, they are just few and far between that. When you see them, you are so excited and you want to find ways to support them. So when you have opportunities for giving business, if it's only men who are sitting around the table deciding who gets this business opportunity, who gets this contract, what are the chances that women will then have bankable opportunities? Because if the contracts go to male-owned businesses, women will always be going to banks, to DFIs with opportunities that are not so bankable. So it's an entire value chain, Iman, that we all need to apply ourselves to say, how do we make sure that women are in the decision-making processes? If you look at one of our biggest portfolio at the NEF, it's that of service stations. We had to engage with the oil majors and say, you can't only bring us franchisees that are men. Women can run the service stations as well as we are willing to fund them, but give them the opportunities. So it's a value chain that all the key stakeholders have to take a conscious decision to say, we want this level of women empowerment in our particular value chain. Because there is money, but there's just fewer opportunities for women to pursue the money that is out there.
Again, with each of our panelists, there's just so much that's being said that we really need to focus on. And I'm hopeful that in the next, 40 minutes or so that we have to talk, we're able to really open up some of these discussions that are still landlocking women from these opportunities. Because it staggers me that there is, as you say, resources that have even been set aside for women, but women are not participating. And I wonder if that doesn't have to do with the pathology of inferiority that women might have in our society, as patriarchal as it is, or bad experience that they have, or a million things that women are doing at any given time, but they can't exclusively focus on pursuing a business idea. A lot of questions coming in. Let me begin to put that to the panel. But Lee, Funeka, if there's anything that you want to throw in, please, let's just have an organic discussion. And Lee, I know that you're listening attentively as well. Some of the stuff you've experienced yourself in trying to access monies, the people that you work with are trying to access money. So if there's something you want to put to Funeka and Tlengiwe, please do go ahead. But let me begin to share what we're hearing on the chat. And Yamkela says, thank you for the webinar. It is important. It's very helpful. Please share where one can apply for this funding. I have a business idea I would like to implement, but capital is preventing me from starting, so now I've been saving. And actually what I quoted earlier was, I think 88% of businesses go the self-funding route because people feel like they won't get assistance or they don't know how to get assistance. Some more thoughts from Mojaji Kabe says, Iman, how much data do we have suggesting that women managers are worse than male counterparts in not taking women seriously for work or business initiatives. I don't know if we have that data on hand right now. I do know that in our pay gap webinar, we did touch on that subject lightly. And we actually found that women were more productive in their managerial and leadership roles than men were. And I think that the idea that women keep other women out is more a stigma that's perpetuated rather than a reality that exists in the boardrooms. And Fikile says, I've applied for funding through the NEF, but I was never approved. How can I ensure that it goes through this time? And Matseleng Mahodi says, I like what Funeka just said. I mean, the real estate industry, there's such a big opportunity for women. I see a lot of women still stuck in the idea that it's a male-dominated industry. Yes, it is, but there's no male that can stop us. There is a lot of support. And the question is, what can we do for women to make them escape the perception of gender bias, even where it doesn't exist? Maybe let's start with that last question around the perception of gender bias. Lee, I don't know if you want to kick off responding to that question.
Yeah, I've experienced it myself. I think Funeka touched on something that says banks are not seed capital providers. And she advises that rather banks should be considering to partner with us that are looking, to start businesses. Some of us are not even starting, have been there, have been trying, and saving money to get going, and we are going, even though we did not receive the assistance that we are looking for at the bank. But I think it is critical for us in that point by Sis Funeka that banks will not provide seed capital. Perhaps clarify that a little for me, because it created so much delay in my business. Thinking that if this bank is not giving me this, maybe that bank will consider me. But maybe let's put it out there that banks will not give you seed finance, but rather look for it in other ways. You see, because we all have a mindset that, okay, I'm ready to start, I can go to the bank, this is what I've got, and the bank looks at you and says, no. But then again, something that we should also look at as women, I found that when you're looking for assistance in companies, banks included, when the person sitting on the other side of the table is not a sister or another woman, there's much more, willingness to listen than a sister. In most cases, in some cases, I've found that happening. But this is what I'm saying. I've found that happening, and it puts you down. You find a woman, most of you find a woman of your color, and you say she's going to listen to me, and every time she ticks on the book when you're talking, it's like you're getting off, you're finally off. Even if she doesn't say it in front of you at the time. But it has happened to me. Without being personal, I do bank with Standard Bank. I did encounter problems initially 13 years ago, but I eventually found some happiness. And there's a woman in front of me, and it happens to be a black woman. She helped me. She went all out. But my concern, and my main concern is, still that gogo, that auntie out there, who will not know where to go, but to the bank closest to her, and the person looking at her and considering her, is she or he willing to take the risk at that gogo who doesn't look even promising that she can pull up a business?
All right. So, I think what you're saying is that it's a little bit hit and miss. It depends. Well, first of all, is the realization that we have to do a lot more interrogation when we go on the funding seeking journey. We have to know which institutions are open to us. We have to know which institutions have set aside money. We have to know what we need to take to these meetings. I think that it needs to be as basic as that. And every time I do these webinars, I think that we just need the how-to tutorial for women, especially those in the rural areas, to say, let me role play this for you. Let me show you how you do it, and then you go forward. But let's go back to some of the tougher questions. And this one is from an anonymous attendee who says, there seems to be a disconnect if there is funding for women available but no participation. Surely we should ask why this is so. Like Lee was mentioning, that for rural women, going to a bank is like going to Joburg. It's intimidating. Does the NEF go out and reach women? Tlengiwe?
Oh, yes. Thank you for that question. Actually, what we do as the NEF, obviously now with the lockdown, we're not able to do that. We go to rural areas, we go to townships to just, and there, we will talk to women, but we just talk to all Black entrepreneurs at large in those areas to just make them aware, what are the opportunities out there? Who can you talk to? What are the requirements if you go to a DFI? What are the requirements if you want to go to the bank and so forth? We even went a step further and set up what we call, entrepreneurship development training. So you find that sometimes people will come through, they have some ideas, but they're really not sure how to put their things together. So we'll take them through a 6-week intensive training, and this training is run by a women-owned business to engage with people, sometimes in their own languages. Because sometimes I come from rural KZN in a very small village. So if you can go to my village and you come there speaking in English, you might lose some of the people there who need the assistance and the support. So it's those nuanced initiatives to say, when you get to the people, you can talk to them in their language to understand what are the opportunities that are there. We also have incubation, to say, okay, fine, you have this idea, but you need a lot of hand-holding. So we'll refer some of our applicants for incubation and so forth. But the question was, if there is funding for women, why are women not coming forward? And I think it was you, Iman, earlier on to say, it's some of the the stereotypes that makes women to be scared. They don't want to be indebted. They will try their best to make do with the resources that they have, not realizing that sometimes, that amount of leverage can just actually, take their business to the next level. So it's really to continuously also educate each other to say, you can leverage the resources that you have to make a bigger impact out there. But it's to also intentionally make sure that some of the opportunities that you get, you set them aside for women. So we do go to rural areas, we do engage, and not just rural areas, to townships as well. There's a lady in rural KZN, I don't know if you guys know a place called Jozini, it's northern KZN, a rural area. This lady just started a creche. It was a small creche, just taking neighborhood kids. But she realized that there was a huge demand for an additional school, because as people are progressing, they want their kids to, be instructed in English, just to give them better opportunities. She came to the NEF and said to the NEF, I have this idea of developing, a semi-independent school, because obviously, because of the area, they can't develop these big brands of private schools that are.
Under a bit of time pressure, so I'm going to ask us to get to, did she achieve that support then to expand, realizing in the moment that there was an opportunity?
Definitely. She now has a proper school that goes up to grade 7, very affordable to the parents in the area, and she's now looking for funding, and we're actually engaging banks because there is an opportunity to even build a high school.
All right.
And this is a woman in rural KZN.
We're going to move towards, some of really understanding some of the obstacles that are standing in the way before we conclude towards the end of our discussion about the action steps that we need to take to achieve our goals. So we want to look now at the challenges to correcting this picture that you've all presented, that there's money out there, specific institutions offering specific types of funding. The issue is that not enough women are coming forward. We have to understand why this is happening and what some of the proactive steps are that a lot of these institutions that have money can embark on to ensure that they are able to fulfill their mandates. So Svaneka, I believe you had your hand up, so let's have you come in and then let's start to talk about practical ways. If you're a woman entrepreneur, what are the first things you need to be thinking about and where are the first ports of call you can go to? Go ahead.
Sure. So I wanted to just emphasize the point that Usislingi made, that it is actually the starting point. The problem we have is that we have very much uneven starting points because women don't get the most fertile soil. If you listen to the farm gases layer, it's that type of situation, So I do think that we need to start combining the issue of funding with the issue of access to really good opportunities. And that the people who are making really decision makers on allocating the opportunities are absolutely mindful about what happens. There's already a framework like that in this country, but it needs to be implemented properly. So if you look at these things called supplier development, so every decision that gets made in every institution to buy something, because ultimately it ends up being there, that those decisions are ultimately must be made in a way that gets closer to the representation of women in this country so that people actually have access to good opportunities. So we have to ask ourselves, both in public sector and private sector, what are these reasons? And it shouldn't be, I know that, for example, in my industry, they'll be like, oh no, but we buy this, we buy machines, ATMs abroad. But surely that's true in the short term. In the long term, it should be possible to develop an industry like that in our own country, in partnership with DTI, for example. So I think that's where it starts. The minute you lose it there, then the value chain is lost. And the second piece is, of course, the funding, the people whose job it is to provide seed funding. I think two things for me. The first one is that banks or wherever it is that people think funding is obtained, there must be a partnership. So there must be a strong partnership between banks and NEF, for example, strong partnership with all other angel investors that are there. Because wherever people are knocking, there should be an access. There must be a way of seamlessly referring people to those types of opportunities. So that's one practical thing that we can do. So there should be a very easy platforms. And it's not one doors, it should be multiple doors where people can get out. I think that's another bottleneck there. That's why I applaud Sislendu and NEF for setting up women only, allocating seed funding only for Bank for Women. But once again, she cannot provide seed funding where there is no opportunities, fertile opportunities that are provided to begin with. And then lastly, when it comes to the core role of banks of scaling, I do want to say that, and this might be a bit of a controversial point, from everything I've seen, there is really no boogeyman here. There isn't anyone who's sitting there and saying, no to women, this is that. There isn't that. I think that what you are seeing is that you are seeing the consequences of step 3. Because step 1 and step 2 are broken. Step 1 being access to good opportunity. Number 2, access to proper seed funding for women. By the time that when you're looking for a bank and you're looking for scaling opportunities, I'm saying keep trying, and what will help you to keep trying is formalize your business. Because you are going to an institution that is going to help you scale. If you don't have any books that shows that this opportunity that you have, A, is a good opportunity, and B, yazin, that the seeds, the plants, the early plant is there, it's very difficult for you to get access to fund. So there's a lot of businesses that are ready for scaling, but there's not enough, it's too cash intensive, no proper bank accounts, no records. So when it comes to that, when you are in the third step of scaling, make sure that your business is formalized. You've got a proper bank account, you've got books, and the third one is that you've got a tax number. All of those things absolutely going to be critical to help you to get to the next step.
So, Funeka, maybe then to be useful, I mean, and to Lee's point and some of the points that are coming through on the chat, which I'm going to continue to share, is it is about synthesizing the information that we have, making it very simple and then accessible to as many women as possible. What's, from your perspective, what is the major turnoff when you get people, wanting to access the bank for finance? What is a hack that we can be aware of? I mean, already to Lee's point and to the point you raised earlier, don't come right at the very beginning in ideation phase. You're not going to be considered. I think that's a big kind of commandment that we've all just learned this morning for a lot of us who didn't know. But what are some of the other turnoffs that you should not do, even at that point of when you're looking to scale?
I think the one of the very big things, the decisions that are made around who gets money to scale or not are dependent on what we can see. If we can't see anything, then we have no basis to make a decision. So this thing around formalizing your business is a really, really, really big deal. If you are receiving 100 Rand a month or 10,000 Rand a month on a monthly basis for your business, I need to be able to see it. If it's in cash and before you bank it, you go and buy stock and you only bank the residual, I don't see that. I need to be able to see the general footprints of all your money coming in and your money coming out. So the big thing is I cannot back what I cannot see. Make sure that your business is visible. Because once your business is visible, then it can be scaled.
Lee, I want to turn it over to you because, like you said at the beginning, you had to learn the hard way. And I think yours was a process of experimentation, as it is for many women, especially who are trying to access money to get their businesses going, to be able to develop an idea and to have something that you can take, to the second level or second tier funders. Share with us, for the benefit of those who are listening, to avoid some of those kind of that wasted energy or that wasted time that you experience. What are some of the hacks you can share from your perspective right now?
I think I'm learning mostly on how to deal with, the idea of getting into business on its own. But usually, I'm playing a devil's advocate here because I'm speaking for my sisters, my mothers, and my grannies who are who have had to take up this business, whether it's a father that passed away or a mkhulu that is now no longer there for some other reason. And the mama, the gogo, now has to make it happen, that there's a plate of food in the table, that the kids still go to school, and that the crop is maintained, because whether it's a vegetable or sugarcane or the goats, they need to be, to be fed, maintained in order to get, to be able to buy it to the end user. And usually at a go, you don't know that this is what happens. And usually these institutions, the banking institutions, already know that, oh, you are in the sugarcane industry, this and this and this and that. And it's the first time for you, because somebody else has been doing, and as usual, women are left behind, and Ubaba will go to the bank, will go to the miller, will go to wherever, where there is money, and won't inform or educate you, take you through with them as to what is it. And you get into the institution and it's like blocked. No, we can't help you. Your crop is registered too, Mr. So-and-so, unfortunately. And I'm looking to a point where the women that receive us in these institutions have the heart to say, Gogo, okay, we're going to need to maybe change this, or go and register yourself as now the producer. So that's the first step I'm hearing, that it must be registered to you, because if you come and it's registered to somebody else, it won't be considered. So take the GOCO through, because I've had quite a few of them. Some of them are even still in their mourning attires because 2-3 years down the line, because she's waiting to get some money that maybe the father died and there was money in the bank and it's tied up through a myriad of reasons by the banks, and she can't get access to. Somebody must have the heart, to carry that through.
What's concerning me, Lee, and maybe let me interject there really quickly. I want to bring in some questions which speak to that demographic specifically. But what puzzles me, and I think what frustrates me in hearing this type of conversation over and over, is that you have, institutions that have money, especially ring-fence money, that are ready to be dispersed, say we are ready and we are involved and we're in the community. And on the other side, you have those who are trying to access that, saying that we have so many roadblocks and hurdles to overcome that we can't do that. But as you saw in the beginning of our program today, when we look at the South African economic landscape, if women are able to start businesses at the same rate as men, by 2022, we have the potential to boost our economy almost, upwards of 150 billion rand, in fact, closer to around 200 billion rand. So this is my concern, is why there is this fissure in both the opportunity and those who are seeking to access that opportunity. So let me go back to the questions, and Tlengiwe, I'm sure that you're always, especially in platforms like this, inundated with questions that are specifically related to the DFIs. And this one is from Matsi and Komo, who says, good morning. I personally have female entrepreneurs who've been to the NEF a few times with no luck. Either your application gets lost in the system, or you are not approved because your application is handled by different people asking for different documents. And then much later, you're told the bad news. If we can bring our business at inception, is the NEF able to handhold the NEF, the SMME? The NEF application form is frightening, to say the least. I suggest the NEF run training in Gauteng and so on. What would you say to someone like Matsi? In fact, let me share one or two more, Sis Tlengiwe, while we're talking about the NEF. I've got one or two other questions. Batabile Dlamini, is this the Honorable Batabile Dlamini, I wonder, asking why is WoSA not inviting the DFIs to explain why they want such huge interests from small business? So maybe in the answer as well, we can talk about interest rates, and why has it been difficult for DFIs to integrate your funding model to tested models that women establish for survivals? I think what she's saying there is, it seems like it's, heavily bureaucratic and, ultimately economically frustrating for women. Tlengiwe?
Thank you, Iman, for those questions. So, obviously, I think as a precursor, I think it is important to remember that DFIs are dealing with taxpayers' funds. So, in terms of governance and scrutiny, the processes that you employ need to be able to stand to scrutiny to make sure that funding is advanced to businesses that are able to repay it, so that it can then be advanced to more businesses. Because if you look at it, Iman, NEF was only given 2.4 billion by government. We've been able to put into the economy 7 billion because the businesses will fund it, repay, and we fund more businesses. So that is very important. So the funding criteria really at the NEF is based on the business itself. Because our focus is on Black entrepreneurs, we can't ask for collateral. We will ask for it, but we know in most instances, the people we are dealing with do not have that collateral. They do not have assets waiting to be, committed. So if you look at commercial banks, in most instances, they will look at a security cover to say, we'll fund you if you can cover this percentage of the loan. We don't have that luxury given the demographic that we are looking at. So we have to look at the business itself and its ability to generate the cash flows to repay the loans. So that's why we do a detailed due diligence. We'll engage with you as an entrepreneur. We'll engage with the people that you want to supply. We will even negotiate for you a contractual arrangement with your suppliers that will make sure that your business is sustainable. And unfortunately, because of what we're raising around women getting bankable opportunities. Some of the women that will come through at the NEF, the business on its own does not demonstrate, or the idea that is put before the NEF does not demonstrate the ability to repay the funding. But as I was saying earlier on, so for some of them, where we see that there's potential, we'll then put you through entrepreneurship development. We can put you through our incubation program to make sure that your idea actually is fine-tuned to be able to receive funding. And on the issue of pricing,
is that something that's offered to the entrepreneur when they come in and you see, that they've got, the kernel of an idea here, and this is how we can support them? Is that what you offer them? Because they wouldn't know to ask for it, right?
Yes, we offer we'll offer that to them. So we have partnered with a number of incubators, and in the medium to long term, we actually want to have our own incubation, center. Obviously, we have limited resources, and if we can unlock more resources from government, we'll do that. But for now, we partner with a number of incubators to say, here is Iman, this is her idea. We believe that this is a great idea, but it needs that nurturing and support for it to be able to access debt funding, if I can call it that. But also, we will structure the funding to respond to the need. So, we'll say, okay, and I can make an example, of, I'm sure we all know, the late Thandi Moteo. When they came to us at the NEF, they wanted very high risk revolving credit facility. And we had to come up with a structure to say, how do we support this majority women-owned business to have this facility to allow them to get more opportunities out there? And by the time, we gave them a bigger facility of 50 million rand, some of the people are saying, no, this is not a commercial decision, this is an emotional decision. But we're saying, for us, you can't divorce the two. It is emotional because we can see that this women-owned business is missing out on opportunities because no one wants to give them this high-risk facility. But it is also commercial because we know that if we give them this facility, they will get the opportunities and their business will grow. So we do that. And on the issue of pricing, actually, when a business is women-owned, it's a plus in our pricing model. So you get a business that has got a higher ownership of women will pay a lower interest rate than a business that is 100%.
What's that number like? Very quickly, can you give it? What is the percentage?
So for women empowerment, it can go up to 100 basis points lower than a business that is owned by a man.
All right. I want to move us to land some of the themes that we've been expressing so far, and I want to connect that to some of the other comments and questions that we're getting through the chat. Let's move into some of the action steps that we need to embark on urgently to achieve the goal of making sure that women are funded equitably, that the obstacles are removed for them, that they have access to the information and access to the opportunity. And I think I want to start with you, Funeka, is something that you touched on earlier on was the opportunity to partner. How then, if the bank can't come in at inception, what is the opportunity that exists for people in the value chain to still consider banks as a port of call in a kind of, beehive method of funding? So there's no just one organization that you're going to stick with from point zero till the end. Is how you can evolve your funding journey as you go through the process.
Thank you, Sisi. So two things. The first one, I think I'm going to emphasize this again. We must implement preferential procurement policies throughout South Africa. That's step one. And it must not be, there must be no excuses across public sector, private sector, and the what is contemplated in the legislation around women-owned businesses, it must be implemented. Step number two is what Cecilia said. I think that if people, when South Africans come to a bank and are looking for something that a bank doesn't offer, the bank shouldn't say no. The bank should say, we don't do this, but we can connect you with Sis Klengiwe, or we can connect you with so-and-so. There must be caring about solving a problem for Lomundu, for this human being that's in front of you. And so that's the biggest opportunity to partner, in my view. And the third one is exactly what Cecilia spoke about, which is about how do you connect all of this partnership with grassroots in a way that is accessible. There are many, many grassroots entities that are trying to solve the same problem. I think for me, that is where the opportunities really are, is the connection of really grassroots entities that are trying to solve the problem, the seed funders and the banks. Wherever a person goes to get help, they should be able to get directed to the right place. This is not hard. This can be sorted out very easily with technology in the background, where even a bank can take the application and submit it to these persons, so instead of just ukomba umuntu. So that, I think, is one big thing that I can say all banks can do with immediate effect.
But Kuneka, hold on. And this is why this platform is important, and what we're trying to do that is different is not do as we've seen in other places, utter platitudes and deep philosophies on how we can move. But based on what you've said now, which is a really practical response to making sure that wherever a woman connects with an application for funding or an institution, that is not lost, even if it doesn't fit that institution's criteria. You're talking about creating a bit of an ecosystem of where that could go and how they could be redirected. What is the thing that we can do to make that a reality, from this moment on? How do we activate
Any bank, and I think actually any funder we should actually have crowdfunding platforms that enable people to do that. I know many banks are already thinking about it, and essentially is to say, if I can't do it, I'll find someone else to do it. There is already basic infrastructure that's there. I believe any bank can get this up and running in the next 6 to 12 months. It is that practical.
Are you going to lead the way?
Yes, we're definitely going to do it.
Okay. Lee, I wonder for you, again, in what we can take from this conversation that is practical, not only to the women that are represented through the organizational work that you do, but just in general, who feel isolated and excluded from all of this information and all of these opportunities. If you're advising someone, talk us through your practical steps for how you're going to, you make sure that you are seen and heard.
Iman, I'd say persistence, not giving up even when, you've received the most grumbling face in front of you to say no. But over and above this, I want to request and to emphasize to us women, girls out there, let's hold hands, let's assist each other, let's push each other up. Let's extend a hand. When you're up there, extend a hand to pull up the other woman that still wants to get there. Let's find ways. If this, what I was looking for, is not going to be possible, like I think Sis Funeka and Sister was saying, there will be another way if what I was looking for is not the right way. But direct me to the other door that might give me what I'm looking for, that might be able to accommodate what you couldn't accommodate at the time. Let's be more recipient to what comes our way, rather than saying we don't do that, because it's so disheartening. Sometimes it shuts down somebody, the young girls that are trying, that are out there, and with all that, they get out there and they're told, no, it won't happen. Okay, this won't happen, but how else can you help this soul that is trying to make a living without having to go and work for an employer? That's what I'm trying to get out. Let's help each other. Let's hold hands. I'm amazed at the opportunities that I'm hearing from Sis Tengu and Sis Funeka, that there is always, another way of getting through what you are trying to push. And maybe this wrong window that you only knew would assist you. But look elsewhere. Direct me where you think I can get what I'm looking for. We've been encouraged a lot to form co-ops. Co-ops are not working, but all the institutions says you must form a co-op. Co-ops have been formed. They're not always working. If they work, they only work for a few. They go out and they look for women that don't even know what a co-op will do. But because they've been advised that go and form a co-op, it would be your easy way. And
you know, I'm connecting so much, Lee, to the heart of what you're saying and the spirit of what you're saying, because I can only imagine, you know, and you're expressing it secondhand for us on behalf of those who come to you and share their stories. But can you imagine for those families and for those women particularly who are under the thumb and the foot of patriarchy, how much more disempowering and heartbreaking it is when they can't break free. There are things called sisterpreneurs and these networks in places like Nigeria where, you know, if you're a woman in business, you reach out to another woman in business and you kind of pull them up to the point of what you're making. But here's another structural issue, though, and I don't want to leave without you addressing this and helping us understand, Lee. Silindile says, when we buy land as married women here in Umbumbulu, we are not allowed to own it. It's registered in our husband's names. We have no claim, even if you are the one who bought it. It goes back to Silindile's point around collateral and even Funeka's around sometimes in these applications, the need for collateral and being able to kind of stabilize your application. Silindile also said, but I'll get you to answer that point, but just another comment from her saying, thank you for this platform. Women are such a gold mine, but there's so much that's in place to keep women down. There are masses of women who suffer low self-esteem, and some of them end up dying with amazing ideas. I live in Umbumbulu, and we are a group of women passionate about agriculture, but it's difficult to secure land. Ownership and access to land is a big obstacle to women entrepreneurs who seek to run agribusinesses. So what can banks do? Funeka, maybe you can talk to us about the collateral issue. But Lee, maybe just to pick up on this point, I mean, there are structural impediments that will also prevent women. How do we dismantle those frameworks?
It's one of the food for thoughts that I had coming here, because the fact that the land, most of the land that is available in the rural areas, especially, is land that belongs to Amakosi. So somebody else controls it, even if the husband that has passed away. Because he was your husband does not naturally mean that you can take over. It must go back to the system for you to be maybe interviewed to see, for them to see if you have a son that can do that, and that son will stand to be sort of scrutinized to see if he can take over and fill in the shoes of the father. So those are some of the most difficult areas. But I want to, in this case, say the organization that I'm with, SAFTA, has entered those areas to say they're able, we've formed relations with the Amakosis in most cases. In most cases, we've been able to go and present ourselves on behalf of our members to say that we are here and we want to work. There is land that is available. How can you just let it stand? And we've been able to form partnerships with Amakosis in some of the areas. Maybe that would be a situation, because we do have SAFTA in the area of Mbumbulu. We do have SAFTA offices. Maybe if they would go there and maybe try and find out who can assist them, I'm sure that information would be made available even after this conversation. But we have been going through those difficulties. It's one area that is not easy to crack right now. Why? Again, it's because it is heavily male dominated.
Yeah, if I didn't hate politics so much, this would be one of the reasons that I would want to get into government, you know, to try and, I mean, you know, just listening to us speak, listening to the comments shows me that there are ways to short circuit some of the problem areas in the cul-de-sacs in activating how women can run their businesses and get on their way and contribute to the economy, but it's not happening. I want to put maybe a difficult premise then to Hlengiwe and to Funeka. Some of the comments coming in say that you're predicating this lack of funding to women as the woman's fault. Either they don't know enough, they're not going to the right places, and when they get to the right places, they're not asking the right questions. In other words, blaming women for not getting funding, making it seem as if the problem is them and not some of the and not the institutions, not you yourselves. When the problem is that the banks are run by men and they keep women out, and the DFIs aren't going as far as they need to go to support women's businesses. How would you respond to that criticism? And Funeka, I'll give you the mic first, and then I'll take a comment from Hlengiwe.
I think both Sister Hlengiwe and I are very clear that one of the big problems we have is lack of the right opportunities for people, for women. So that is not blaming women. What we are saying is that the people who are allocating the bankable opportunities, so to speak, are definitely not doing that. So that's the first thing. I'm acknowledging that banks are not necessarily good at directing, to Cecilia's point, directing people to where the help is, and that we are going to do things better. But I cannot sit here and say that and not speak the truth. As far as I've seen, to the best of my ability, there isn't anyone in a banking industry at the back who's saying, say no to women. This thing is structural. And we need to make sure it cannot be sorted out in isolation. A woman on their own, a woman entrepreneur on their own can't sort it out. Banks on their own can't sort it out. The seed funders on their own can't sort it out. It's actually something that has to be sorted out. We all have to come together and put down our weapons and actually come together and actually find a solution for this one. The one thing that I wanted to just add to the issue about, to the issue around funding that we haven't spoken about is that a lot of people have a lot of property that they cannot access and turn into capital because of big property rights problems, including amakosi, but even in places where people can have title deeds, and therefore people end up not being able to access the right instruments. I think if we keep on pointing fingers at one another and turning one another into enemies, we are not going to move forward. There is nobody, there isn't any, the whole system is not supportive to women, and therefore we all need to come together and actually find solutions that work.
Yeah, again, it kind of ties back to we had on the pay gap, which is, again, was kind of putting, and maybe you're right, Funeka, that the responsibility, because nobody else is doing it, is going to have to be up to women to finally kind of jumpstart and, put some jumper cables onto this economy and take away the reins from those who are in the position of policy making, who are in the position of setting these criteria, because it's not happening in the way that it should. And again, the responsibility is being tossed to us. Maybe Hlengiwe, in answering this premise, is to feed in Fikile's question, who says, how come I was never put through the incubation program? I was only told my proposal will not go through because I didn't have a contractual agreement with the university I wanted to offer student accommodation to. In other words, trying to say that there are these sort of minor restrictions and prohibitions put in the way when there shouldn't be.
Thank you, Iman. So I think on the issue of practically, how do you respond to this issue? I think that if as an institution, so as DFIs, it has to be one of our objectives to fund women. If we don't have it as an objective, if we don't measure it, we won't really be able to achieve it. So it must be intentional. We must be deliberate about it. So in terms of what Fikile was raising, there are different types of businesses. There are businesses that businesses that you can incubate, and there are businesses that you really just need to have a contractual arrangement. So if a student accommodation, it's not like it's an idea that you have to try and refine. Student accommodation is provision of student accommodation to students of a certain tertiary institution. And if that tertiary institution, because in most instances, those are students that are funded through NSFAS. So if you are not And actually, most of the people that we have funded in student accommodation, it's women, it's young women, and we help them with the accreditation. So it's for you to show that you are engaging the university. You can't just say, I'll build it and hopefully they will come. It's for you to show the initiative that you have taken, and we can then help you to jump the other hurdles to make sure that the university, gives you a letter of comfort that they can accredit you, that you are within the radius that they require for their students, and so forth. So a business that would be, a business that you can take to incubation would be a technology business, because you still need to refine the idea, you still need to, maybe, pilot it and so forth. So it's not everyone that comes through that will be eligible to go for incubation, because for some businesses it doesn't make sense. But what is important for me, Imani, for women to really, take these opportunities, we're not saying it's their fault. We're saying it's a societal responsibility. We need to implement the policies that are in place to make sure that when opportunities are given to women, we all understand that we're not doing them a favor. We all understand that we are doing all of us as society a favor, because we have seen the success and the traction we get when we do support women. So
yeah, I think the difference, Sis Lingiwe, is that yes, it is a societal, responsibility, but you have an organizational mandate as well that is legislated in a particular way to deliver on why, a DFI, for example, and there are many different DFIs, we're talking about the NEF in this case, is created to pursue and make sure that women's access to funding is activated. Just a quick answer, how well, hand over heart, do you believe the NEF has done in being an ally to women and women's applications in particular?
I think the NEF is doing very well and continues to do well. And I think one of the reasons is because at the helm of the NEF is a woman. So we are very passionate about supporting women, not just in providing them funding, but in even, giving opportunities for procurement to make sure that businesses that are women-owned are prioritized. Because, with the legislative mandate that we have, without the support of the bigger, community in terms of making sure that opportunities are not just open for men, opportunities are open for women, that mandate will be difficult to implement if women don't have meaningful opportunities to help them to participate, meaningfully in the economy. So we don't just want women to be at the periphery. We also want them to be at the heart of the economy with real opportunities that all of us should play a role for women to get.
In 30 seconds, Lee, because I'm going to give you the last word, but in 30 seconds to Funeka and to Hlengiwe, and since I have you on the mic, Hlengiwe, maybe to you, why do you think women are not coming forward with bankable funding requests, and what can we do to change that?
I think it boils down to what I was saying earlier on, Iman. It's just that women are not being given the great opportunities. But also it's about role modeling, for women to have other women who can support them, who can be their mentors, who can coach them and help them to get ready for funding, so that when they come, they already, know what are the hurdles that they're supposed to jump. And also then to have, women on the other end. It's important to have, I know Cicely was saying she had a better experience with a woman on the other side of the table, but she also had a great experience where a woman went out of their way. So we need to encourage women to be in these financial institutions, to be the decision makers, to be the ones who identify the opportunities, because unless we roll up our sleeves and try to do it for ourselves, no one else will really do it for us.
Funeka, and then Lee, I'm coming to you, don't worry. I'm going to give Lee the last word, but Sis Funeka?
I have, thank you very much. I've learned so much from the session, and I think it's increased my resolution just to dial up two things: more partnering and a little bit more caring about the people who are right in front of you. Thank you.
And Lee, from your perspective, and actually before I take that final comment, I just want to let everybody know There have been so many questions and so many comments that I haven't been able to share because we're limited for time, and if we're going to have a meaningful discussion, I need you to answer as much as you can. But what this is showing me is that all of us together have a great deal of work to do to make sure that the opportunities are shared to people outside of the information highways and byways, that we need to reach every corner of our country to make sure that people know what they can do and what opportunities exist. Mahadi Buthelezi says, women who are listed at the Credit Bureau, this is the ITC, don't stand a chance to SOAS funding. At times it's because of unemployment and not being able to sustain the debt they had. How do we go about that? Can we not take the Amakosi to court for robbing us of our land as women, because it is unconstitutional for them to sell land to a woman but give ownership to a man? Amakosi and Izinduna are not governed by the same constitution that governs everyone in our country. And these are the big questions that are not just philosophical questions, because they lead to deep structural impediments to women doing what they need to do. But Lee, maybe if you can, and I know that it's always hard to try and end on this positive note, and I don't think that's the intention. The intention of these webinars is to just get information out there so we can begin to think about it and we know where to go with what we need to do. But if you can, I mean, what is an encouraging thing that you can share with those who are watching? And don't worry, I will leave some details of the NEF and of how to reach Funeka. If you can just apply that at the end of Lee's answer, and then we'll bring the webinar to a close. We want to leave you with that resource. Go ahead, Lee.
Thanks, Iman. Firstly, I've gained so much myself, and I'm looking forward to going back to other women, SAFTA women, who are out there and are eagerly waiting to hear. Some of them are sitting behind their screens and are witnessing this. And I want to be able to go back to them to say, guys, it's doable. Sisters, we can still do it. One question, maybe as food for thought for my sisters, there are structural systems in place. We are women here, and maybe we were not even involved when these structural systems that are in place and that are pushing us backwards. What can we do to deliberately bring them down and create our own that will make us, have that easy access to the systems that will bring us up? Thank you so much. You've shared so much that you've been able to put out the myths that are out there, that banking institutions may have been projected as, probably because some of us have experienced it. I have indicated I once experienced the most horrible in the hands of a bank. But in the end, the same bank provided a face. But mind you, it was through a mail that I know that was able to locate me to the right person that was going to be able to listen to me with an ear to be able to assist. And it works. Sometimes you have to use those connections in order to be able to get the assistance and to get through. It works sometimes, but some of us do not have those instances. So I want to say, big up to the ladies that are sharing the platform with us. Iman, you've done great. I hope it's not the last one. I was terrified coming to this, but I warmed up to it. Please open more platforms for us to come and share our experiences.
Well, we have the Women of South Africa to thank for creating this conversation. And if you want to know more, you can go to, everyone who's listening, go to www.womenofsouthafrica.org. The resources for this conversation, the links, the contacts will be placed on the website. Please sign the petition, and more importantly, join us for our final session next week, and we'll keep you updated in the press as to what that's going to be. But most importantly, I think it's for all of us in learning more is to share what we've learned with people who haven't had access to this conversation, but to be persistent, I think, as Lee, Funeka, and Tlengiwe are saying, is to not give up at the first hurdle. There are resources, there are ways for us to do this, and to hold to account. I mean, if you're not coming right and organizations are not doing as they're supposed to do, you do have channels to communicate and to raise those. To Funeka, Lee, and Tlengiwe, thank you so much for your time this morning. I really do appreciate it. I know it's Women's Month and everyone has been inundated with requests, so when we called, you just without hesitation said yes. So we appreciate you so much. You can find the highlights of the webinar as well on womenofsouthafrica.org. Please use the resource, and I'll see you all next week, hopefully. Have a blessed day.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.